Pregnant woman delivers a baby that turns to stone. How did this happen? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, swirling ominously over the ancient ruins where Amelia stood. Her breath came in sharp gasps as she clutched her swollen belly, the life within her stirring urgently. Amelia had felt drawn to this place, the Temple of Ages, an abandoned sanctuary whispered about in legends. Locals avoided it, calling it cursed, but she had felt an unexplainable pull, like the ruins were calling her name. Amelia was 8 months pregnant and had been traveling through the countryside, searching for answers to the strange phenomena surrounding her unborn child. Her journey had begun months ago when strange occurrences began happening at her home. Objects moved on their own, mirrors cracked when she gazed into them, and shadows seemed to whisper secrets in the night. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but when the ground beneath her home trembled one night, she knew something unnatural was happening. The villagers were the first to notice that something was different about Amelia's pregnancy. Her glow wasn't the warm radiance they expected from an expectant mother. It was almost otherworldly, her skin taking on a faint luminescent sheen under the moonlight. Midwives in the village whispered behind her back, crossing themselves whenever she walked by. Even her husband, Henry, a man of logic and science, began to look at her with unease. "You're imagining things, Amelia," Henry would say, though his eyes betrayed his uncertainty. "Pregnancy does strange things to the body. That's all." But Amelia wasn't convinced. One night, she dreamed of the temple, a vivid vision of marble columns, overgrown with vines, standing under an eternal twilight. She woke with a start, her hands trembling. It felt like a message, a beacon drawing her to its forgotten halls. When she shared her dream with the local healer, an elderly woman named Moira, her reaction was startling. "You must not go there, child," Moira warned, clutching a talisman around her neck. "The Temple of Ages is cursed. It's said to be a place where the gods punished those who defied them." But Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that the temple held answers. And so, against Henry's wishes and the pleas of the villagers, she set off on her journey. The temple stood atop a hill shrouded in mist, its marble pillars cracked and weathered by centuries of neglect. Vines snaked their way up the columns, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. As Amelia approached, the ground beneath her feet felt charged, as if the temple itself was alive, watching her every move. Inside, the air was eerily still. The temple was vast, with intricate carvings on the walls depicting scenes of gods and mortals locked in struggle. At the center of the chamber stood an altar, its surface etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Amelia felt a strange mix of awe and dread as she stepped closer, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. As she reached the altar, a sudden pain shot through her, causing her to cry out. She doubled over, clutching her stomach as the pain intensified. The temple seemed to respond, the carvings on the walls beginning to glow brighter, their light pulsating in rhythm with her labored breathing. And then it happened. Amelia collapsed to her knees, her vision blurring as the pain consumed her. She could feel her child moving frantically within her, as if responding to an unseen force. The air around her crackled with energy, and a low hum filled the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. In her agony, Amelia thought she saw figures emerging from the walls, ethereal shapes of gods, their expressions stern and unyielding. They seemed to be watching her, their eyes filled with both curiosity and judgment. With one final scream, Amelia felt the life within her leave her body. She collapsed onto the altar, her strength spent. When she opened her eyes, she saw her child for the first time. The baby was perfect, small and delicate, with tiny fingers and toes. But as Amelia reached out to hold her child, she gasped in horror. The baby's skin, soft and warm just moments ago, was beginning to harden. A grayish hue spread across its body like a ripple, its flesh turning to stone before her very eyes. "No!" Amelia screamed, clutching the baby to her chest. Tears streamed down her face as she rocked back and forth, her cries echoing through the temple. The gods on the walls seemed to watch in silence, their faces impassive. Hours passed, though it felt like an eternity to Amelia. She sat motionless, cradling her stone child, her mind reeling from what had just happened. The pain of childbirth was nothing compared to the agony she now felt in her heart. She had come to the temple seeking answers, but instead, she had been met with a cruel twist of fate. As the first rays of dawn broke through the cracks in the temple walls, Amelia noticed something strange. The carvings on the altar were glowing again, their light illuminating the symbols etched into the stone. She realized that one of the symbols looked familiar. It was the same mark that had appeared on her skin months ago, just after she first felt the baby move. Gathering her strength, Amelia traced the symbol with her fingers. As she did, the light grew brighter, and the room was filled with a warm, golden glow. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the chamber. "Amelia," the voice said, its tone both commanding and gentle. "You have been chosen." Amelia looked around, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Who's there? What do you mean, chosen?" The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Your child is no ordinary mortal. He is a vessel, a bridge between the realms of gods and men. His transformation is not a curse but a gift, though one that comes with great responsibility." "A gift?" Amelia said, her voice trembling. "You call this a gift? My baby is stone. How can you expect me to accept this?" The voice softened, its tone filled with a strange kind of sorrow. "It is not for you to understand now. In time, you will see the truth. But for now, you must protect him. There are those who would seek to use his power for their own gain." Before Amelia could respond, the light faded and the voice was gone. She was left alone in the silence of the temple, her mind racing with questions. Amelia sat in the temple, cradling her stone baby, her mind racing with questions and doubts. The voice she had heard, the glowing carvings, the transformation of her child, it all felt like a fever dream. Yet the weight of the stone infant in her arms was undeniable. Whatever had happened was real, and now she was left to make sense of it. The sun had risen fully by the time Amelia finally stood, her legs shaky and her heart heavy. She looked down at the baby, its tiny features frozen in an expression of peaceful slumber. Despite the weight of sorrow in her chest, Amelia felt a fierce surge of love and protectiveness. Whatever this gift the voice had mentioned, it was clear her child needed her. "I don't know what's happening," she whispered to the baby, her voice trembling. "But I promise you I'll protect you. I'll find answers." Carrying the stone baby in her arms, Amelia began her journey back to the village. The path was treacherous, the rocky terrain slippery from the morning dew. Her body ached from the ordeal, but she pressed on, her determination fueling her steps. The temple seemed to watch her as she left, its cracked columns and weathered walls looming in the distance. The journey was slow, and by the time Amelia reached the outskirts of the village, the sun was high in the sky. Villagers stopped and stared as she walked through the streets, their eyes widening in shock and confusion at the sight of the stone baby in her arms. Whispers spread like wildfire, and soon a small crowd had gathered. "Is that her baby?" one woman muttered, her voice tinged with fear. "It can't be," another replied. "No child looks like that." Amelia ignored the murmurs, her focus on reaching her home. But as she approached her front door, she was stopped by Henry, who had pushed his way through the crowd. His face was a mix of relief and confusion as he saw her, but when his eyes fell on the baby, his expression darkened. What is this, Amelia?" he asked, his voice shaking. "What happened?" Amelia hesitated, the weight of the past 24 hours crashing down on her. "Henry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something happened at the temple. Our baby, he's been transformed." Henry's eyes darted between Amelia and the baby, his disbelief evident. "Transformed? Amelia, this is madness. You shouldn't have gone to that place." "I had to," she replied, her voice firm. "I was looking for answers and I found something. I don't understand it yet, but I know our child is special. I need your help, Henry." But Henry took a step back, his hands trembling. "This isn't natural," he said, his voice rising. "You brought something back with you, something cursed. Amelia, we need to get rid of it." Amelia's heart sank. "Get rid of it?" "He's our son, Henry. How can you say that?" "I don't know what he is," Henry shot back, his fear turning to anger. "But he's not our son." "Amelia, this isn't right." The crowd murmured in agreement, their unease growing. Amelia felt her grip on the baby tighten as a sense of dread washed over her. She realized she was alone in this, completely and utterly alone. That night, Amelia made the decision to leave the village. She couldn't stay in a place where her child would be treated as a monster. With a heavy heart, she packed a small bag with essentials and wrapped her baby in a thick cloth to protect him from the cold. As the moon rose high in the sky, she slipped out of the house and into the darkness. The journey ahead was uncertain, but Amelia knew she couldn't face it alone. She thought of Moira, the village healer who had warned her about the temple. If anyone had answers, it would be her. Amelia found Moira's cottage at the edge of the forest, its windows glowing softly with candlelight. She knocked on the door, her hands trembling. Moments later, the door creaked open, and Moira stood before her, her face lined with concern. "Amelia," Moira said, her eyes widening as she took in the sight of the stone baby. "What have you done?" "I didn't mean for this to happen," Amelia replied, her voice breaking. "I went to the temple and something happened. Please, Moira, I need your help." Moira stepped aside, motioning for Amelia to enter. The cottage was warm and filled with the scent of herbs and spices. Amelia sat at the table, cradling her child as she recounted everything that had happened. The glowing carvings, the voice, the transformation. When she finished, Moira sat in silence, her expression grave. "The Temple of Ages is a place of great power," she said finally. "It's said to be a gateway between the mortal world and the realm of the gods. If what you say is true, your child is no ordinary being. He is a bridge, a connection between the two realms." Amelia's heart raced. "But why? Why my child?" Moira shook her head. "The gods work in mysterious ways, child. But one thing is certain, your son will be sought after. There are those who would use his power for their own gain. You must protect him at all costs." Moira handed Amelia a small amulet, its surface engraved with ancient symbols. "This will help shield him from those who would seek to harm him," she said. "But it's only a temporary measure. You need to find the oracle." "The oracle?" Amelia asked, her brow furrowing. "She resides in the mountains to the north," Moira explained. "She is the only one who can provide the answers you seek." Amelia nodded, her resolve strengthening. "Thank you, Moira. I won't forget this." With the amulet around her neck and her baby cradled in her arms, Amelia set off into the night once more. The journey to the mountains would be long and perilous, but she knew she had no choice. Her child's future, and perhaps the fate of the world, depended on it. The road to the mountains was fraught with danger. The terrain grew more rugged with each passing day, and the weather turned bitterly cold. Amelia's body ached, but she pressed on, her love for her child giving her the strength to continue. She encountered many challenges along the way: wild animals, treacherous cliffs, and even a band of thieves who tried to steal her belongings. But each time, she found a way to overcome them, her determination unwavering. One night, as she camped under the stars, Amelia gazed down at her sleeping child. The stone surface of his skin shimmered faintly in the moonlight, and for the first time, she noticed something remarkable: tiny cracks in the stone, through which a soft, golden light emanated. Her breath caught in her throat. "You're alive," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You're still in there." Amelia's discovery renewed her hope. She realized that her journey wasn't just about protecting her child, it was about finding a way to bring him back. She didn't know how, but she vowed to keep searching until she found the answers. As the mountains loomed closer, Amelia felt a growing sense of anticipation. The oracle held the key to everything: the voice, the temple, her child's transformation. She could feel it in her bones. But the path ahead was still uncertain, and the dangers she faced were far from over. The journey to the northern mountains grew more treacherous with each passing day. The path was steep and winding, with loose rocks threatening to send Amelia tumbling with every step. The cold was relentless, biting at her fingers and toes despite the layers of cloth she had wrapped herself and her child in. Yet she pressed on, the golden light she had seen emanating from her baby's stone form etched into her mind like a beacon of hope. Amelia's thoughts often wandered to the oracle. Who was she, and why did Moira believe she held the answers? Legends of the oracle spoke of a mystical figure, a seer who had lived for centuries and held the wisdom of the gods themselves. If anyone could help Amelia understand what had happened to her child, it was the oracle. One evening, as Amelia set up camp in a sheltered alcove, she heard the distant howl of wolves. Her heart raced as she tightened her grip on her baby. The howls grew closer, echoing through the narrow mountain pass, until they were joined by the sound of footsteps crunching through the snow. Amelia's breath caught as a pack of wolves emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. They moved with an eerie coordination, their gaze fixed on her. She backed away slowly, her mind racing for a solution. Before Amelia could act, a bright golden light erupted from the baby in her arms, illuminating the entire area. The wolves froze, their ears flattening against their heads as they whimpered and backed away. Amelia stared in shock as the light grew brighter, forming a protective barrier around her and her child. The wolves retreated into the darkness, their howls fading into the distance. Amelia's hands trembled as she looked down at her baby. The golden light still shone faintly from the cracks in the stone, as if the child was responding to the threat. "You're protecting me," Amelia whispered, her voice filled with awe. "You're so much more than I could have imagined." The realization strengthened Amelia's resolve. Her child was special in ways she couldn't fully comprehend, and it was her duty to ensure his safety. The oracle's answers couldn't come soon enough. The days turned into weeks as Amelia pressed on, the peaks of the mountains growing ever closer. The journey tested her endurance in ways she had never thought possible. Food was scarce, the nights were bitterly cold, and her body ached with exhaustion. Yet she found strength in her child's quiet presence and the memory of the golden light that had saved them. One morning, as she reached a narrow mountain pass, she came across an elderly man sitting by the side of the trail. He was wrapped in thick furs, his beard white as snow, and his eyes sharp and piercing despite his age. "You seek the oracle," the man said, his voice low and gravelly. It wasn't a question. Amelia stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding. "How do you know that?" The man chuckled, the sound like the creak of old wood. "The oracle's power extends far and wide. She knows you're coming, and she's been waiting." "Then please," Amelia said, stepping closer. "Can you take me to her?" The man nodded, rising to his feet with surprising agility. "Follow me." The man led Amelia through a series of winding paths and hidden trails, the way so intricate that she would never have found it on her own. As they climbed higher, the air grew thinner, making every breath a struggle. But Amelia pressed on, her determination unwavering. At last, they reached a plateau where a massive cave entrance loomed before them. The cave was unlike anything Amelia had ever seen, its walls carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer in the light. A soft, golden glow emanated from within, and the air was filled with a sense of calm and reverence. "The oracle awaits," the man said, gesturing toward the cave. "Go." Amelia hesitated for a moment before stepping forward, her child cradled tightly in her arms. As she entered the cave, she was enveloped by the warm glow, the air filled with the faint scent of incense. The walls were lined with crystalline formations that sparkled like stars, and at the center of the chamber sat a figure draped in flowing robes. The oracle. The oracle's presence was commanding, her eyes glowing with a light that seemed to pierce straight through Amelia's soul. She gestured for Amelia to approach, her voice soft but filled with authority. "Amelia," the oracle said, her tone carrying the weight of countless years. "You have traveled far to seek answers?" "Yes," Amelia replied, her voice trembling. "Please, I need to understand what's happened to my child. Why did this happen? What does it mean?" The oracle studied Amelia for a long moment before speaking. "Your child is no ordinary mortal. He is a vessel, chosen by the gods to bridge the realms of man and divinity. His transformation is both a gift and a burden, for his power has the potential to reshape the world." Amelia's breath caught. "But why? Why my child?" "The gods do not choose lightly," the oracle said. "Your child's spirit is pure, untainted by the conflicts and desires of this world. He is a beacon of hope, but also a target for those who seek to exploit his power. Amelia's heart ached as she looked down at her baby. Is there any way to reverse this? To make him whole again? The oracle's expression softened. The stone form is a protective shell, shielding him from harm until he is ready to fulfill his destiny. In time, the shell will break and his true form will emerge. But the journey will not be easy, and the path ahead is fraught with danger. The oracle reached into the folds of her robes and produced a small vial filled with a shimmering liquid. Take this, she said, handing it to Amelia. It is a gift from the gods, a blessing to aid you on your journey. When the time comes, you will know what to do with it. Amelia accepted the vial, her hands shaking. Thank you, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. I'll do whatever it takes to protect him. The oracle nodded. You are stronger than you know, Amelia. Trust in yourself, and trust in the bond you share with your child. Together, you will face whatever lies ahead. As Amelia left the cave, the golden glow fading behind her, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The answers she had sought were not easy to accept, but they had given her the clarity she needed. Her child's fate was intertwined with something far greater than she could have imagined, and she was determined to see him through it. The elderly man was waiting for her at the entrance, a knowing look in his eyes. Did you find what you were looking for? He asked. I found what I needed, Amelia replied, her grip on the vial tightening. Thank you. The man nodded, his expression unreadable. The road ahead will test you, but I believe you'll find your way. The journey back down the mountain was just as arduous as the climb, but Amelia's determination kept her going. She thought of the oracle's words, the shimmering vial in her pocket, and the golden light within her child. There was still so much she didn't understand, but she knew one thing for certain: she would do whatever it took to protect her son. As the landscape leveled out and the forests came back into view, Amelia felt a sense of calm wash over her. She had faced the unknown and come out stronger for it. But the challenges were far from over. Amelia's journey back to the base of the mountains was grueling, but she carried a newfound strength within her. The oracle's words echoed in her mind, reminding her that her child was not simply a victim of fate but a pivotal piece in a divine plan. The shimmering vial she carried in her pocket was a lifeline, though its purpose remained a mystery. Amelia resolved to guard it as fiercely as she did her stone child. The dense forest at the foot of the mountains seemed to envelop her, its canopy filtering the sunlight into golden beams. For a moment, the world seemed quiet, almost peaceful. But Amelia knew better than to let her guard down. The oracle had warned her, others would come for her child, drawn by his power. She couldn't afford to be careless. As she trudged through the underbrush, a sudden rustling in the bushes made her freeze. Her heart raced as she clutched her child closer, her eyes scanning the shadows. The rustling grew louder, closer, until a figure emerged. A man dressed in tattered robes, his face gaunt and his eyes wild. Please, he rasped, holding up a trembling hand. I mean no harm. Amelia hesitated, her instincts urging her to keep moving. But the man's desperation was undeniable, and something in his eyes reminded her of her own pain. Against her better judgment, she lowered her guard slightly. What do you want? She asked cautiously. The man staggered forward, his voice filled with urgency. You carry something powerful. I can feel it. Please, I need to see it. Amelia's grip tightened on her child. I don't know what you're talking about. Your child, the man said, his gaze falling on the stone infant. He's the one, isn't he? The vessel. I've heard the whispers. The gods have chosen him. Fear surged through Amelia as she took a step back. Stay away from us. The man raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. I'm not here to hurt you. I was once a servant of the oracle. I've spent years searching for the vessel, hoping to protect him. If you'll let me, I can help. Amelia's mind raced. Could she trust this man? His appearance and demeanor were unsettling, but his mention of the oracle gave her pause. She decided to test him. What did the oracle tell you about the vessel? She asked. The man's expression softened, his voice trembling with reverence. The vessel is a bridge between worlds, a being of immense power and purity. But he is also vulnerable, a target for those who would exploit his gifts. The oracle tasked me with finding him and ensuring his safety. Amelia studied the man carefully, searching for any hint of deception. He seemed genuine, but the stakes were too high to take any chances. "If you truly want to help," she said, her voice firm, "you'll prove it. Show me you're not a threat." The man nodded solemnly. "I will do whatever it takes." Over the next few days, the man, who introduced himself as Elias, traveled with Amelia, helping her navigate the dense forest and find food. Despite her initial wariness, Amelia began to see glimpses of sincerity in him. He spoke of his years of servitude to the oracle, his devotion to protecting the balance between the mortal and divine realms, and his guilt over failing to fulfill his mission sooner. "I was supposed to be there," Elias admitted one evening as they sat by a fire. "When the vessel was born, I should have been there to guide you. But I let my doubts and fears cloud my purpose. For that, I am deeply sorry." Amelia regarded him silently, her own doubts lingering. She wanted to believe he was on their side, but trust didn't come easily, not anymore. As the days passed, Amelia began to notice strange phenomena surrounding Elias. He seemed to have an uncanny ability to sense danger before it arrived, guiding them away from potential threats. Animals that had once regarded her with hostility now kept their distance, their gazes wary but not aggressive. And then there was the way he spoke to her child, not with words, but with a quiet reverence, as if he understood the baby's silent cries. One evening, as they rested by a river, Elias turned to Amelia, his expression serious. "There's something you need to know," he said. "The oracle wasn't entirely forthcoming with you." Amelia's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "The transformation your child underwent," Elias continued, "it wasn't just to protect him. It was also to prepare him. When the time comes, the stone will break, and his true form will be revealed. But that moment will bring great danger. Forces far beyond our understanding will converge, drawn to his power. You must be ready." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. The oracle had hinted at the challenges ahead, but hearing it so plainly from Elias made the reality of their situation sink in. She looked down at her child, the faint golden cracks in his stone form glowing softly in the firelight. "How am I supposed to protect him from something like that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. "You're stronger than you realize, Amelia. You've already faced so much, and you've come through it all with your love for him intact. That love will guide you. And you're not alone." Amelia met his gaze, searching for reassurance. She saw no lies in his eyes, only a shared determination to see her child safe. The forest eventually gave way to open plains, the horizon stretching out before them. Elias explained that their journey was far from over. They needed to reach the sanctum of eternity, a sacred place where the vessel's power could be fully understood and harnessed. The sanctum was hidden deep within an ancient valley, guarded by trials that would test their resolve. As they traveled, Amelia began to feel the weight of her journey more acutely. The physical toll of carrying her child, the emotional strain of constant vigilance, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead threatened to overwhelm her. But each time she felt herself falter, she would look down at her baby, his golden light a reminder of why she couldn't give up. Elias proved to be an invaluable companion, his knowledge of the land and its hidden dangers guiding them safely through treacherous terrain. He taught Amelia how to forage for food, how to read the stars for direction, and how to defend herself if the need arose. Slowly but surely, Amelia began to feel a sense of empowerment, a realization that she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. One night, as they camped beneath a sky full of stars, Elias shared more of his own story. He spoke of his time as a scholar, studying ancient texts and learning the ways of the gods. He had been drawn to the oracle's service after a series of visions led him to the Temple of Ages. "I thought I was prepared for the path ahead," he said, his voice tinged with regret. "But nothing could have prepared me for the enormity of this task. Protecting the vessel is more than a duty, it's a calling. One I intend to fulfill, no matter the cost." Amelia listened in silence, her respect for Elias growing. She still had her doubts, but she couldn't deny the sincerity in his words. As they neared the entrance to the valley that housed the Sanctum of Eternity, the air grew heavy with anticipation. The landscape was otherworldly, with jagged cliffs and crystalline formations that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Amelia felt a strange mix of awe and dread as they stepped into the valley, the weight of their journey pressing down on her. Elias turned to her, his expression serious. "The trials ahead will test us in ways we can't predict. But remember, you are not alone. Trust in yourself, in your child, and in the bond you share." Amelia nodded, her resolve firm. She didn't know what awaited them in the sanctum, but she was ready to face it head-on. The valley that led to the Sanctum of Eternity was unlike anything Amelia had ever encountered. The ground shimmered faintly underfoot, as though it was alive, pulsating with the energy of an ancient and powerful force. The air was thick, making it harder to breathe, yet it carried a strange sweetness, almost like the scent of blooming flowers. Amelia felt as if the valley itself was aware of her presence, watching her every step. Elias moved ahead with cautious determination, his gaze scanning their surroundings. "The sanctum tests all who enter," he warned. "It seeks to measure our hearts, our intentions, and our strength. Be prepared for anything." Amelia nodded, her grip on her child tightening. The golden cracks in his stone form glowed faintly, as though he too sensed the importance of this place. The valley grew narrower as they advanced, the cliffs on either side rising higher until they formed an almost impenetrable barrier. Amelia's heart raced as she wondered what lay ahead. The first trial came suddenly. As they rounded a bend, the path ahead dissolved into a shimmering pool of water that seemed to stretch endlessly. The surface reflected the sky above, but something about it felt wrong, like it was more than just water. Elias knelt by the edge of the pool, his expression thoughtful. "This is the trial of reflection," he said. "The water shows us the truths we hide from ourselves. If we're not honest about our intentions, it will reject us." Amelia hesitated, staring at the pool. She had been through so much already. Was she ready to face whatever this trial might reveal? Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, her reflection rippling as she approached the edge. As Amelia gazed into the water, the surface shimmered, and an image began to take shape. She saw herself, but not as she was now. This version of herself looked haggard and broken, her eyes filled with sorrow. The image shifted, showing her cradling her child, tears streaming down her face as she whispered words of apology. "I'm scared," Amelia admitted aloud, her voice trembling. "I'm scared of failing him, of not being strong enough to protect him." The reflection seemed to respond, softening as a golden light surrounded the image. The water rippled again, and this time, Amelia saw a different version of herself, standing tall, her child in her arms, her face filled with determination and love. "You have the strength within you," a voice whispered, though it wasn't clear if it came from the water or from within her own mind. When Amelia looked up, she saw Elias watching her with a small smile. "You've passed," he said simply. "Come on." The second trial came in the form of a labyrinth. The path ahead split into countless twisting tunnels, each one dark and foreboding. Elias explained that this was the trial of direction, meant to test their ability to stay true to their path despite the distractions and obstacles. Amelia followed Elias into the labyrinth, her child held close to her chest. The tunnels were cold and damp, the air filled with the sound of dripping water. At every turn, they encountered strange illusions, voices calling out to Amelia, urging her to turn back, to give up. "Amelia," one voice whispered, low and filled with longing. "You can't do this alone. Come back to the village." She froze, her heart aching at the sound of Henry's voice. For a moment, she considered turning back, but then she looked down at her child. The faint golden glow emanating from his cracks reminded her of why she had come this far. "No," she said firmly, her voice echoing through the tunnel. "I'm not turning back." The illusions dissipated, and the air grew lighter. Elias glanced back at her, nodding in approval. "You're stronger than you know," he said. "Let's keep moving." The third and final trial came as they neared the heart of the valley. A massive stone gate stood before them, its surface covered in glowing runes. Elias approached it cautiously, his fingers tracing the carvings. "This is the trial of sacrifice," he said, his voice heavy. "It requires us to give up something we hold dear in order to move forward." Amelia's heart sank. What could she possibly give up? Her entire journey had been about holding on to her child, to hope, to the promise of a future. She looked at Elias, hoping he had the answer, but his expression was grim. "This one is yours to face," he said softly. Amelia stepped forward, her mind racing. She thought of all the sacrifices she had already made, leaving her home, her husband, her village. But as she stood before the gate, she realized the true test wasn't about physical sacrifices. It was about letting go of the fear and doubt that had held her back. Taking a deep breath, Amelia placed her hand on the gate. "I let go of my fear," she said, her voice steady. "I let go of my doubt. I trust in my love for my child, and in the strength we share." The runes on the gate flared with light, and the massive stone doors creaked open. Amelia stepped through, her heart pounding, as Elias followed close behind. The sanctum of eternity lay beyond the gate, a vast chamber filled with an otherworldly light. Crystalline structures rose from the ground, their surfaces shimmering with hues of blue and gold. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested an orb that pulsed with energy. Amelia approached the pedestal cautiously, her child's golden glow intensifying as they drew closer. Elias hung back, watching her with a mix of awe and anticipation. "This is it," he said quietly. "The heart of the sanctum. The place where his power will awaken." Amelia placed her child on the pedestal, her hands trembling. The golden cracks in his stone form began to widen, light pouring out as the chamber filled with a low, resonant hum. Amelia stepped back, shielding her eyes as the light grew brighter and brighter. When it finally subsided, she looked up to see her child, not as a stone figure, but as a living, breathing baby, his skin glowing faintly with the same golden light. Amelia's breath caught, tears streaming down her face. "You're alive," she whispered, her voice breaking. Elias stepped forward, his expression one of reverence. "The transformation is complete," he said. "He is no longer just a vessel, he is a beacon of hope. His power will shape the future, but it will also attract great danger." Amelia nodded, her resolve stronger than ever. "I'll protect him," she said firmly. "No matter what it takes." As they prepared to leave the sanctum, the golden light surrounding her child began to dim, settling into a soft glow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. Amelia felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months, though she knew their journey was far from over. The sanctum had given her child a new beginning, but it was up to her to ensure his safety in a world that would not understand him. The journey away from the sanctum of eternity felt different, lighter, yet charged with a sense of purpose. Amelia now carried her child as a living, breathing being, his soft coos and glowing skin filling her with hope. But she also carried the knowledge that their trials were far from over. The oracle's warnings, the trials of the valley, and Elias's cautionary words all painted a picture of a world that would challenge them at every turn. Elias walked beside her, his gaze often flickering to the child. "The transformation marks the beginning," he said quietly. "There will be those who feel the shift in power and seek it out. You've done well to protect him so far, but the true test lies ahead." Amelia nodded, the weight of his words settling on her shoulders. "I'll protect him," she said firmly. "No matter what it takes." They made their way back through the valley, the shimmering ground beneath their feet now a comforting reminder of what they had overcome. As they reached the edge of the forest, Amelia felt a strange sensation, a pull as though something or someone was calling to her. She glanced at Elias, who seemed to feel it too. "They found us," he said, his voice tense. Amelia's heart raced as she tightened her grip on her child. From the shadows of the trees emerged figures cloaked in darkness, their movements silent yet deliberate. There were 5 of them, their faces obscured but their intentions clear. They were here for the child. Elias stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of a dagger at his side. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low. "I'll hold them off." "No," Amelia said, her voice trembling but firm. "We do this together." The first of the cloaked figures lunged forward, their movements swift and unnerving. Elias met them head-on, his dagger flashing in the dim light as he parried their attack. Amelia held her child close, her mind racing for a way to protect him. As the fight raged on, Amelia felt the familiar warmth of her child's glow intensify. She looked down to see his tiny hands reaching out, golden light emanating from his fingertips. The light grew brighter, filling the forest with an otherworldly radiance. The cloaked figures hesitated, their movements faltering as the light enveloped them. One by one, they retreated into the shadows, their forms dissolving into the darkness. The forest fell silent once more. Elias turned to Amelia, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. "He protected us," he said, his voice filled with awe. "The light, it's his power." Amelia cradled her child, her heart swelling with both pride and fear. "But it also means they'll keep coming," she said. "We can't stay in one place for long." Elias nodded. "You're right. We need to keep moving, to stay ahead of those who would seek to harm him." As they continued their journey, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The forest seemed to close in around them, its shadows darker and more oppressive than before. But her child's soft glow served as a constant reminder of the light they carried, a light that could push back against the darkness. Their path eventually led them to a small village nestled in a valley, its thatched roofs and cobblestone streets a stark contrast to the wilderness they had traversed. The villagers eyed them warily as they entered, their gazes lingering on the child in Amelia's arms. News of the vessel had likely spread farther than she had anticipated. "We should find a place to rest," Elias said, his voice low. "But we need to be careful. Not everyone will welcome us." Amelia nodded, her grip on her child tightening. They found refuge in a modest inn at the edge of the village, the innkeeper too preoccupied with his duties to ask questions. As they settled into their room, Amelia felt a rare moment of peace wash over her. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to relax, cradling her child as he drifted off to sleep. His soft, rhythmic breathing filled the room, a soothing reminder of the life they were fighting to protect. Elias stood by the window, his gaze fixed on the village below. "They'll come," he said, breaking the silence. "Maybe not tonight, but soon. They always do." That night, Amelia dreamed of the temple once more. The marble columns, the glowing carvings, the voice of the gods. It all came rushing back, vivid and overwhelming. But this time, the vision was different. She saw her child, older now, standing tall and radiant, his golden light illuminating a world shrouded in darkness. Beside him stood a figure cloaked in shadow, their intentions unclear. "Amelia," the voice of the gods said, deep and resonant. "The time will come when he must choose his path. Guide him well." She woke with a start, her heart pounding. The vision lingered in her mind, its meaning both clear and elusive. Her child's destiny was greater than she could fathom, and her role in shaping it was more important than ever. The following days were a blur of movement and caution. Amelia and Elias stayed one step ahead of their pursuers, relying on the kindness of strangers and the cover of night to avoid detection. Each encounter with danger only strengthened Amelia's resolve, her love for her child fueling her determination. As they reached the edge of a vast desert, Elias paused, his expression grave. "Beyond this lies the final leg of our journey," he said. "The desert is harsh and unforgiving, but it's the only way to reach the sanctuary of light." "The sanctuary of light?" Amelia asked, her brow furrowing. "It's a place of protection," Elias explained. "A haven where the vessel can grow and learn without fear of the outside world. But reaching it will be the greatest challenge yet." Amelia nodded, her resolve unwavering. "Then we'll face it together." The desert was a relentless expanse of golden sand, its dunes stretching endlessly under the scorching sun. The heat was oppressive, sapping their strength with every step. But Amelia refused to falter, her child's soft glow a constant source of hope. Elias led the way, his knowledge of the terrain guiding them through the treacherous landscape. They traveled by night whenever possible, the cooler temperatures offering some relief from the heat. But even under the cover of darkness, the desert held its own dangers. One night, as they rested beneath a star-filled sky, A sandstorm swept in without warning. The wind howled, and the air was filled with stinging grains of sand. Amelia clutched her child tightly, her heart racing as she struggled to find shelter. Elias called out to her, his voice barely audible over the roar of the storm. "This way." He led her to the shelter of a rocky outcrop, its jagged edges providing some protection from the wind. Amelia huddled against the rock, her child's glow illuminating the swirling sand around them. The storm raged on for hours, its fury unrelenting. But through it all, Amelia felt a strange sense of calm. The golden light emanating from her child seemed to push back against the chaos, creating a cocoon of warmth and safety around them. When the storm finally subsided, Amelia and Elias emerged from their shelter, their bodies battered but their spirits intact. The desert stretched out before them, its golden sands shimmering in the dawn light. "We're close," Elias said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "The sanctuary is just beyond the next ridge." Amelia's heart swelled with a mix of relief and anticipation. They had come so far, overcome so much, and now the end of their journey was within reach. As they crested the ridge, the Sanctuary of Light came into view, a magnificent structure carved into the side of a mountain, its walls glowing with a soft, golden light. Amelia felt a surge of hope and gratitude as she gazed upon it, her child cooing softly in her arms. The gates of the sanctuary opened as they approached, and a group of robed figures emerged to greet them. Their faces were serene, their eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "Welcome," one of them said, their voice gentle. "You've done well to bring him here." Amelia felt tears streaming down her face as she stepped into the sanctuary, the weight of their journey finally lifting. She knew their challenges were far from over, but for the first time, she felt truly safe. Her child's journey was just beginning, but she would be there every step of the way, guiding him, protecting him, and loving him with all her heart.